It's done past 10 o'clock. We give you 5 minutes comfort break and you take 10 minutes. Okay. My name is Councillor Taylor and I represent Leeds City Council and I'm also the chair of this committee. Today we are here to discuss a very important issue. So I take it all members have read their papers and ready to ask questions to whoever they pointed to. But before we do that, we introduce ourselves first. So should I start from my left?
Morning everyone, I'm co-chair of the Leeds City Council.
I'm Councillor Barry Anderson. I'm substituting for Councillor Liam Buckley today.
Morning everyone, Trevor Lake, independent member.
Hi, John Ferguson, Councillor for Wakefield.
Morning, Paul Sullivan from Bradford District.
Councillor Lee Richards, please.
Robert Farmer here from Kildare Council.
Morning, Jo Sykes, independent member.
Fiona Bernardo, Partnership Support for Wakefield Council.
Good morning, Catherine Johnson, Chief Finance Officer for West Yorkshire, please.
John Robbins, Chief Councillor of West Yorkshire, please.
Good morning everyone, great to see you. Tracy Braden, Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Hello, Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Hello, Wendy Stevens, Research and Performance Manager for Policing and Crime.
Angela Taylor, Director of Finance and Commercial Services for the Combined Authority.
Ms Hunter, Director of Policing and Crime and Place of the Combined Authority.
Morning, Neil Fleming, Policy Manager of the Policing and Crime Team at the Combined Authority.
Morning, Sharon Moore, Consultation and Engagement Manager at the Police and Crime Team.
Morning, Councillor Usman Ali from Wakefield Council, also the Deputy Chair for this panel.
Good morning, Gwen Lowe, Councillor from Kirklees.
Good morning, Councillor Anthony Smith, Kirklees.
Good morning, Councillor Hayden from Bradford.
Good morning, Councillor Anne Kingstone from Calderdale.
Becky McIntyre, Director of Resources and Transformation from Calderdale Council as the independent advisor to the panel today.
Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, Legal Advisor to the panel.
And Samantha Wilkinson, Police and Crime Panel Officer.
Thank you all, and also thank the other officers that sat up in the gallery. I'm not sure if anyone will come down to address any issue. I hope not. Could I ask members to please speak up in the mic? I know it's cost of living and we're a bit short of mics in the middle there. Hopefully we might have a few pennies to get a few more mics in the future. But can you please speak up in the mic if you can, please? Let's get started. So item 1 is apologies of absent. We have 2 apologies. We have Councillor Buckley and Councillor Hussain. Councillor Anderson is subbing for Councillor Buckley. Thank you for attending, Councillor Anderson. Item 2, approval of the minutes and the input. If members read the minutes, is any comment? Are our members satisfied?
No problem, Chair. Just a correction, I wasn't here on the 8th of December.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3. Urgent item. We have an urgent item this morning. And we're going down to item 4, member declaration of interest. Does any members have anything to declare in this committee? No? Thank you. We will move straight on to item 5, which I'll hand over to Tracy, Alison, and John.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you everyone for coming together to discuss this important item for our community. As everyone will know, as part of the 2024-25 police finance settlement, the government announced that council tax precepts can go up to £13 for Band D, and significant resources have been put into gathering the views of residents from West Yorkshire. And from that consultation, 71% of residents support the £13 precept. Now, this is an opportunity for us in West Yorkshire to recruit more PCSOs and more staff to work in the police contact centre, responding to calls from the public. We are comfortably on track to maintain those promised level of PCSOs and will enable the contact centre to be fully staffed. Important as the number of calls has increased by a staggering 122,000 And we've also begun a live chat option, which I think is becoming more welcome, that people can talk to somebody directly in the moment rather than waiting for their phone call to be answered. We have to maximise the resources of West Yorkshire Police due to the pressures faced and the needs of community. So we think the £13 precept is the only viable option. Obviously, a reminder that coming into this year, the panel was concerned about the financial situation. You were privy to the accounts and to the difficulties that the police were going to be facing, and whether our police and crime plan could be successful in that environment. Well, we have delivered in the last year. However, this is in a background of staggering cuts to local authorities, and this is impacting on the residents of West Yorkshire. Child neglect is up by 73%. 1/3 of children in West Yorkshire are living in poverty. This impacts on the work of the police. And certainly we must give West Yorkshire Police the resources they need to respond to those community concerns. So, Chair, I leave it there for now. I'm looking forward to a good and robust debate. I have colleagues with me that can answer specific questions, whether that's on the funding, whether that's the consultation or the survey, but I leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, is Alison or Janet anything to add before opening up to members? Now let's open up to members to ask questions. I've got a few names written down. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor. Thank you to all the officers who contributed to this. It's a welcome, comprehensive report. If you could just perhaps turn to page 3. The first bullet mentions a one-off pension grant to support the administration of the McLeod remedy. 1.1 million to West Yorkshire Police. Could you do two things for me? Could you just give me a little bit of clarification of what the McLeod remedy is and whether 1.1 million will cover the gap or whether there's any additional risk that needs to be factored in?
I think John will be able to answer that.
Through the major council.
Yeah, thank you. So for a number of years we've been aware about the calculation issue with pensions that was caused by a change from central government's calculation, and therefore some police officers, as they retired, were disadvantaged by it. So now they've had options as to how they treat the pensions, and therefore there's been massive amount of calculations for people who have retired since then and people who are going to retire into the future. So the additional costs for us through our provider, which is XPS, is roughly 1.6 million to date. What we're forecasting over the next few years it's going to take for this transition, and we've received 1.1 million this year from the government to support that. So we will use that money over the next few years to be able to cover those costs. So not covered in their entirety, but they're covered a fair proportion of them.
Okay, so there's about £500,000 which we're going to have to cover from our general funds but over a period of time, is that correct?
Yeah, but we've not received to date, but we may still receive. So at this point, this is the level of contribution that we've got. But there's still been requests through the National Police Chief Council and through the Director of Finance to get additionality once people are really aware of the total cost of it.
So it's
the cost of having a minister in it, just to be clear.
Yeah, but the additional risk is on our radar.
Yes.
Thank you.
If I could just put it in context as well, Chair, that police officers are on 28,000 a year, and the pension, new police officers, but the pension and that security is a part of the package of attraction, because we know that police officers are putting themselves at risk. It is a really difficult job, but a pension is an important part of that package.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mayor and Alison and all of your officers for the work that you've put into this. Really appreciate everything that you do. Please, can I just ask that the current level of inflation remains stubborn at around 4%? How comfortable are you that the level of stress testing that has been undertaken and determining the assumptions around inflation and ensuring the estimates are robust?
Thank you. Thank you, Gwen. Councillor Lowe. Angela.
Thank you. Inflation is always a really difficult one. It continues to move in ways not expected. The approach to inflation here, obviously pay inflation is the most significant inflation element across the police budget. That's been allowed for at 2.5% following the advice given by government about where they would support above that level. There has been a contract-by-contract review of the inflation, and that's been built into the budget, so the contract has known dates when they're being renewed, and so specific allowance has been made where needed. Clearly, if things shift again as they did 2 years ago now, when the Ukraine war happened, then the team will have to look again at how in-year inflation is dealt with, but there should be sufficient thought has gone into planning this within the budget set for next year. We can all get caught by the very, very unexpected, but there is a robust methodology involved. I don't know if Catherine wants to add anything.
Yeah, so as Angela says, we've taken all the major contracts and we've got a real specific inflation figure against them where it's known. So for example, if you've got a 3-year contract and it's built in what that level of inflation is going to be. So that's the case for most of our major contracts. For the really volatile areas like electricity and gas, we have we fixed the price this time to make sure that we know exactly what it is. So there's no risk for those two. We know exactly what it is as long as we maintain our reduction on consumption. The real risky ones are around fuel. So we use a phenomenal amount of petrol and diesel, as you can imagine, with all the police cars. So the assumptions around there are always a little bit risky, but we build in assumptions around it that we're quite confident with, and we will be able to cover with reserves should there be a big flux. But we anticipate that we're being quite prudent with the assumptions on fuel.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come to the point about the reserves profile, because it's really at the bottom end of the recommendation, 2.6, and then I think it's between 2.5 and 3.5. And how comfortable you feel with that, and also, and I suppose it's the seek some assurance around the financial resilience, given that the reserve profile, general reserve profile, is so low. And linked to that is a separate question around the budget shortfalls forecast beyond March 25. So whichever one you want to take on page 5, there's sort of 3 scenarios there. Whichever one you want to take, there's some work to be done to meet that shortfall. So the question is around priority-based budgeting. You know, what's it look like? Can we have something that's going to identify what that's going to look like and where the savings will come from to meet those figures going forward? Because clearly there'll be no reserves to dip into to balance those figures out going forward. So I think I'd like to see something around those 2 points as part of the conditions attached to supporting this proposal.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And certainly we're making the case consistently that we need security of funding, and that going from sort of cliff edge to cliff edge is no good, that long-term secure funding. But I'll turn to Angela and then to Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. Reserves is a very hot topic at the moment. I'm sure you're all trying to set budget back in your local authorities, and the headlines are very much about having to raid reserves, use reserves at a level sort of unprecedented. I think what you have here is a very careful management of reserves. I think the police will be very good at trying to set aside where possible, where there have been savings, to allow for as many reserves as possible that can then be used to help soften the blow of those future funding challenges. You're right to flag on the priority-based budgeting. That is the extent to which priority-based budgeting will bring savings will mean the reserves can be used for a little longer, that they will stretch a bit further. But that might be something Catherine wants to pick up in a bit more detail in terms of the work on PBB.
Thank you. And certainly we are looking at priority-based budgeting and challenging Catherine to say this can't also lead to job losses. So, you know, really mindful that where those cuts come and where those challenges are. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. So if I take the reserves and the sustainability point first, so you'll see in this budget proposal we're contributing 0.8 million into the general funds to be able to keep it in line with the reserves strategy, albeit it's a challenging position, it's a very difficult one. We've got so many operational demands to be putting funding into reserves. We've got to do it to be able to maintain that position. every opportunity we get to be able to consider the longer term, we try and set aside monies. I'll give you a good example of that, where we're getting additional funding for 100 officers this time in the year. It's been slightly more than we've spent, so we've put the balance into reserve so that as we face the implications of those people reaching the pay points quicker, we've got that money set aside in reserves. So I do think we take a very prudent approach. Specific to the comment on page 5 and those 3 levels of shortfall, so the one that we use is the top one, but in that there's some fair improvement assumptions around council tax future increases and around levels of government funding. So we set the 3 out just so that you can see the various scenarios, and that kind of lends itself nicely to the commenting on priority-based budgeting, because the way we're running it, it means that we will have opportunities for the Chief Officer team to consider and the Mayor to consider everything for either of those, for any of those 3 levels, because it will give you prioritised grading of service level for every function that we run and what the potential saving would be against each of those areas. But I must stress that we do it where we look at each business area, and our main focus is on productivity and efficiency, because the more we can obviously release through productivity and efficiency, the better. And then the final point we will get to, if we get to a point where we're not receiving sufficient funding to fill these gaps, we will then look at service levels for all those functions, but we will have all that detail there from the very thorough priority-based budgeting exercise we've been running over the last 2 years.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Is that all right, I just comment? I think it's important to recognise that it's not a position that we want to be in, to be cutting reserve, to be drawing on our reserves in this way, but the financial situation that all policing faces and the cuts that we've experienced since 2010 and are continuing to experience. We've just received news of the special grant, which is devastating. All this has to be met within the resources that we've got. And we need, I think, to be challenging government, all of us, cross-party, to understand that policing cannot be resilient in the face of the onslaught of cuts that it's been experiencing. So to answer your question, we're not happy about it, but as all local authority partners around this table know, you've got to cut your cloth according to your needs. The police reserves are probably in a better position than many of the local authorities around this table, if truth be told. But we are not where we want to be, we are where we are forced to be. On priority-based budgeting, I also need to say that it's not all about cuts, it's also about using resources more effectively and efficiently. And we get regular briefings on PVD, and one of the good news stories is that actually we're learning about how resources are being put back on the front line as a result of the process of negotiation with the whole staff team, the unions. Good ideas are being brought forward, and one example is as a result of the change to the PEQF, the Police Education Qualification Framework, less officers were needed in training school to deliver that PEQF, because it's no longer a mandatory degree. You can now go back to the old IPLB, and that means that 30 frontline officers were returned to the front line, and that is as a direct result of the process of PPP.
If I can just come back, thanks everybody for the feedback. There's clearly a lot of work gone on behind the scenes around this area, so I think that would be really helpful if it could be shared with members, so we have a better understanding of how you plan to meet these projected shortfalls going forward. So thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Now, it might be my less than analytical brain, but on page 14, item 4.3, in the crash data figures, it's a great acronym by the way, points, the bullet points, look to me anyway, contradictory. We're higher than the national average, being bullet point 1, and we're lower, and we seem to be looking, comparing the same years, 2017 to 2019, against the last 12 months. I'm just not getting it. If you can assist my feeble mathematics, please.
Wendy, if you just want to just update us, there's just about definitions.
Yeah, and one's about casualties and one's about KSI, but Wendy will explain better than me.
Yeah, the crash data, if you remember, we talked about this as part of the performance monitoring, in that there has been some changes because the data was on a different system and then it moved into the crash system, which kind of changed, should I say, the level of severity, that sort of thing. But the reason for this is because the first one, if you look at the first paragraph, it shows the number of casualties. Now, of course, when there is a crash or a collision, there can be more than one casualty. So then the killed and seriously injured on the second one talks about the numbers that are killed and seriously injured. So one is all casualties, including multiple casualties in a vehicle. The other one is about killed and seriously injured. Of course, there could be multiple in a vehicle, but that's just the killed and seriously injured. So that's the difference between the two. So some of it is due to recording, but mostly it's because of the difference between those two.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Tracy, you touched on this in your opening. There's been a 73% increase on child neglect offences. And if you could just provide some more clarification on that.
That's in the data, the child neglect data. So,
yeah, I think,
back to you, Lynn. Just for the extra data.
Sorry. Yeah, so what's happened is the police have started a new programme as part of their crime system, and it's called Public Protection Notice, and this is where a police officer who sees neglect or any sort of safeguarding issue in a property can send a notice direct to social care so that they're made aware immediately of this. So the 73% that you can see there is due to the fact that this has just started and there has been some teething issues. I think we all agree with this, with showing the background of the case and that sort of thing. So there has been some work done, but this 73% is just showing the numbers that are going straight through to social care. And when social care are getting them, they're putting a case straight onto the system. So that sudden jump is because of that, but it's being looked at in the background as well. So we're hoping to be able to understand. But this is kind of similar to the recording of crime. You'll all remember how we talked about crime data integrity and making sure that we were recording everything. So in West Yorkshire, you'll see on the document, has a high number of crimes, but what you'll find is under the confidence data, actually what it's showing us is that the fear of crime from our residents is lower than most other places. To me, what that says is we're recording everything and people are happy to come forward, but that fear of crime, there's no more crime in West Yorkshire than there is in other places. This is a similar thing. We're recording everything. Social care are getting to know everything that the police see. So we're getting that bigger picture, but that doesn't mean neglect has jumped that number. It's just we're now recording it so we can actually see the bigger picture.
If I could say as well, as that system embeds itself, there will be greater triaging of the most serious cases. But I think it's a fantastic good news story that we've got extra eyes in communities, and that's being fed back, working with our local authority partners who, as you know, are absolutely stretched, trying to support families in our community. And to have those extra eyes is good, but obviously those numbers will need to be interrogated further. And the severity looked at as well. So, thanks to all the social workers out there who do God's own work.
Oh, right. The question I got is what work you've been doing behind the scenes more than anything else on the budget, in terms of what I would call rag rating. So you're looking at your priority items at the top, your personal priorities that you're looking to meet, and then coming down to the items that are being done, but maybe aren't legally needing to be done, maybe aren't essential. And have you done that work? And have you publicised it? This is the first time I've been here for over a year, so I'm speaking in ignorance here, but just having read the papers, doesn't seem to be anything in there. And also setting out the various cost pressures that you've got. You've got a pressure in this area, so in order to do that, you've had to transfer from budget A to budget B to do it, which then leaves you short in budget C. Have you thought about doing that so that people can understand it, because in the pre-meeting we were discussing whether this is a good budget or not, and these were the sort of types of things that were being talked about. So have you done a sort of rag rating on your various cost budget heads, and if so, is that available to the rest of the panel?
Thank you, Councillor. There's an awful lot in that question. So in the first instance, I'll hand over regarding the operational elements to the Chief and to Catherine.
Yes, I think much of what you're asking is probably what Trevor was asking about the PBB process, because that's where it's covered in terms of threat, harm and risk and tolerance levels as to what you can and can't do. The simple answer is one that you would expect me to say is there's not enough in any budget, and it's actually a matter of professionally minimising where we can across all areas. But I think some of what you say, we do all sorts of complex areas around management of risk in law enforcement, a national process called MORAL, where we look at all the different elements. But it becomes very hard financially attributing resources in that way to terrorism versus child sexual exploitation versus homicide investigations. It really does become. So we also therefore take cognizance and account of external reviews and auditing, whether that be through the National Vulnerability Hub, which looks at how we look at safeguarding, or through HMIC-FRS, who kind of look at those balances, through priority-based budgeting, which I've already mentioned, or sort of cost analysis about what resources we put against each element of policing versus the national averages, versus regional averages, versus metropolitan averages. So there's a whole, I'm not trying to be evasive in answering, there's a whole host of different options to look at what you're saying is how, do we actually give them red, amber, green? No, we don't, but we do it in different ways.
Yeah, so in the report on page 8 through to quite a lot of through to 14, it sets out a little snapshot summary from our force management statement. So the force management statement is a really large document that we produce that sets out what we think anticipated demand is in certain areas, what we think the risks are in certain areas, what resources we've got in certain areas. And we use that very much to inform the priority-based budgeting exercises we're doing and everything that we do organisationally really from that force management statement. And that really helps us to understand the risks when we're setting the budget. And certainly if we get to the point where we do have to make service cuts as a consequence of those deficits you can see in future years, that force management statement is one of the primary things that looks at the risks in all areas and how we do it. But I take your point around, if I look at a local authority budget, it more or less sets it out by service, doesn't it? So you can see what I agree to that. The way we are required to set it out is the way we show here. So police officers is a massive chunk, whereas if we set it out by this is how many police officers we've got in each area, which obviously we don't do for obvious reasons, then I think it would be a bit easier for you to see. But certainly if you look at the force management statement for the organisation, it makes it really clear how we allocate resources against risk and threat.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments?
Thank you, Chair. Question regarding national press, I think it's on page 13 and 14. What financial assistance and how quickly do you get financial assistance from the central government, the Home Office, with such threats and incidents out of West Yorkshire Police's control? What's unforeseen? Such as protests or any other major incident where it does take a lot of resources up, and does sometimes that come out of reserves and reimbursed by central government? Thank you.
The simple answer is we get very little. The national threats around counter-terrorism are obviously through the counter-terrorist policing network of the North East, which we own and run. They're subject to their own budget cuts. They've got multi-million-pound deficits to meet, so their resources, are potentially going to reduce. The serious and organised crime is through ourselves, and then the regional and organised crime unit. Again, some money allocated nationally, some money locally. That's subject to budget cuts and reductions over the next year, so there's a threat to service delivery there. In both of those areas, the pressure and the volume of work is like a bath overflowing. When they can't deal with it, it only comes one way. So therefore that puts even more work into the force. In terms of protest, which is often nationally linked, there's no money that comes from central government around that. It's not a requirement. What would be described as meeting the strategic policing requirement to deal with it. When we need to bring in other resources, colleagues will be familiar about mutual aid and an ability to come across. There are some small grants for, which they actually call a special grant in central government, which was historically over 30-40 years about exactly what you raised, Councillor, about significant, unexpected and unaccountable pressures to that force that would then get help. But guess what? That's what Alison was alluding to. That's all been cut over the years, and that's going to reduce even further, because it's my assessment the last pay settlement for policing was paid for either through our budget or money from the Home Office as opposed to the Treasury. So all of the Home Office funding is now being reduced in order to make their books balance. So it is significantly tricky, especially when you then get into the context of international events. You know, we've got some major inquiries ongoing in parts of the force that are looking at exploitation, abuse, and significant abuse of other people throughout the world. And we're providing packages for other agencies in other states to actually intervene for child protection reasons. We do it, of course we do it, because it's the right thing to do internationally. But the short answer is, probably because of the national financial situation funding, there's very little that comes from central government or central policing, or certainly not the Treasury. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Before I come to the question, I'd just like to make a little observation going back to the point that was made by my colleague on child neglect and the increase of 73%. Personally, I don't think that briefing note sufficiently explains the reasons behind that. So I'd ask for a little bit more clarity when we've got a changing process or numbers. Because I looked at that term and I thought, you know, what's going on? So that's just an observation. If you could take that away, I don't know whether the panel would agree with that. So moving on to the question, and it's kind of a broad one as well, because I just want to touch on recruitment and staffing. So it seems to me that last year we did a great job in recruiting PCSOs and officers, but we were effectively running to stand still. We ended up with a net zero. Is that right for last year? Have I read that in the report?
Well, the last time we were here, you asked us to protect those 509 PCSOs.
Exactly. Correct, yeah.
And we're at 522. So we understand the issue.
Yeah.
What we don't want to be doing is carrying too many vacancies in order to protect the public.
Yeah.
We want to keep those figures. So I would hope you'd find reassurance in the PCSO numbers. And certainly the work that we've been doing using the apprenticeship levy to train PCSOs to go on to the bus network to respond to safety of women and girls in our bus safety app. So that's a good news story. And regarding the 750 was our target that we came to you with 2.5 years ago, and we're comfortably over that target.
Yeah, I noticed this has landed, which is welcome, which is the projections for
yeah, it's meant to be a confidential paper that we were asked to provide.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because we haven't got to April 24.
No, correct, yeah, correct. So I think, and we've mentioned this in the panel before, but obviously we've had a successful recruitment drive, but that has actually changed the profile of experienced officers. I think we're now at 40-something% with less than 5 years.
The recruitment hasn't changed the profile.
No.
People retiring.
Correct, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, people retiring, so you've got your natural. Yeah. So the, part of the question is, obviously, people will continue to retire, leave the service, and we are hopefully, to not just maintain those numbers, but increase them going forwards as well to meet our laudable targets. And I'm just want some reassurance that we are all reassured that we are maintaining quality, maintaining the rigour in our recruitment processes, and whether there are any operational impacts of bringing in those new members, those PCSOs or police officers, and whether we've got the resources within existing experienced officers to bring those people in effectively and get them up and being effective as soon as possible. So
Well,
there's a bit to unpack.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, obviously every police officer starts as a beginner,
Yep.
but as Alison referred to, the good news story about the lecturers coming back into frontline policing. But regarding the operational element, I'll go over to John, how that impacts on operations.
Yeah, no, the standard and the levels have not reduced. If anything, they've probably increased. We're very fortunate in West Yorkshire to still be very oversubscribed with a lot of people wanting to join policing. So that's good for any recruitment pipeline. That's not the case in the south of England. They're struggling, specifically in London, to actually get sufficient people to apply to join. So we're not in that place. I think we're increasingly increasing the expectations and standards and levels going forward. As the Mayor and Deputy Mayor have stated, there's also been a change recently in the way in which we're training our staff. It's going to be more focused on West Yorkshire Police work, which I think is good. The big increases in volume of the Police Uplift programme are now coming to an end. So we're kind of returning back to a more stable platform. So that is enabling us to return a few more officers out to the streets. But the point you make is right, and as everybody in this room knows, because of a freeze in recruitment over many years and a reduction in the officer and staff numbers, and then an uplift programme or a replacement programme is more akin to the right word. We've ended up with a younger in service and sometimes younger in age, more inexperienced frontline workforce. There are sufficient people to bring them through. But we saw this in the early 90s, we saw it in the late 90s, we saw it in the 2010s, and we're seeing it again. You then get this missing generation going through the organisation. So you've got a missing generation of people to become supervisors, detectives, experienced officers, and it's like a ghost that goes through the organisation over the next 30 or 40 years. We'll cater with it and we'll deal with it because it's better to have the people there than not to have them. But yeah, it is challenging and stressful and difficult for those officers. In the main, we've held back a lot of movement within the organisation, so a lot of vacancies have been held in specialist departments. So as officers and staff come through and get experience and would normally move through, we've just had to hold them back in many, many ways, which has been difficult as well. So everybody's taken the brunt of it. There's some talk in policing in the future, present company accepted, about, you've got a young in-service workforce, and in the future you'll have a young in-service leadership, which will follow it all the way through because people will tail off, but that's for the future. So I was interviewed for the Home Office Police Uplift programme, did it work? Well, yeah, it's worked. We've recruited all these people. We shouldn't have had to have done it in the first place. It's, if we hadn't had those cuts, we wouldn't be in this position. But it is what it is. We are where we are.
But also, if I could just say regarding recruitment, it is incredibly helpful that West Yorkshire Police is an outstanding police force, and it is easier to recruit to when you know that you're going to be respected in the workplace, etc. So the work that West Yorkshire Police does, and hopefully you'll see reflected in the work we do, holding the police to account, will keep those standards high so that recruitment is continuing at pace.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to raise a question on consultation because it was one of the points that were put in along with the approval panel last year. There's a fairly lot of work being done on focus groups, which is really good to see. Thank you for the detail on that, Chair. And I think if I've read it right, towards the end, the final paragraph sentence is that it was an equal split of those who would support it and not support it. If you then combine that with the fact that there's only 2,000 respondents on the postal and the online, so I think it says in the paper you did an online survey plus 7,000 postal surveys sent out, yet only 2,000 responses. I mean, statistically, it's very, very small, 0.08% of 2.3 million people in West Yorkshire. So my query is, given that the panel asked for more detail and reflection around it, whilst we've got the detail here, it's on very small numbers. And how confident and robust do we feel those numbers are to project forward and make certain assumptions?
Thank you, Trevor. And certainly if you reflect on the numbers that take part in consultations of other precept consultations across forces of the same size, actually we're doing a brilliant job. Those numbers seem small, but actually relatively they're really good. But I'm going to turn to Sharon because she ran the consultation, so she will have more detail for you. Sharon.
I mean, in terms of the focus groups, obviously for us, it wasn't around numbers of people. I appreciate by the time you got the report, we'd spoken to 130 people. We've met some groups since then, so now the total number of people we've spoken to is 163 across 19 different groups. But for us, it was around that level of detail, around the discussion, absolutely. You know, all of the colleagues have had an opportunity to see the write-up. I think what sat behind that, and it was a complex conversation with communities, and we've reached groups that we've never spoken to previously. And just for some added reassurance around the diversity of the groups, we've spoken to an older people's forum, we spoke to a women's group in Halifax where we had a Punjabi translator, we spoke to a community group where we were dealing with men who had multiple and complex needs. We've spoken to people with disabilities and provided easy read presentations to have that conversation. And one of the biggest groups that we spoke to actually last week in Bradford was with people who lived in Bradford but from Chechnya and Slovakia. And again, we've had lots of conversations, but one of the things that was referenced throughout all of the groups was the complexity of what policing means to them. Lots of people spoke about the challenges of being able to afford to pay any kind of increase, even pennies a week. But really, they were really worried about the level of policing in their area. And so they almost felt like they were in a catch-22 situation because they really need the police to step up and do the work that they did. So whilst I appreciate the conversation and the comparison, I think when you get into that level of detail and you really reach out to communities across West Yorkshire, which I'm really confident the work that we were able to do did, even talking to people who have very little engagement with the police, everyone was recognising the need and how critical it was. And one of the surprising things for us was that we were able to talk to, you know, an organisation that I would have imagined was in quite a leafy suburb of Wakefield, yet they were experiencing some of the problems that a group in Bradford were talking to us about, really quite serious crime problems, things that they were seeing on the streets. So ultimately, whilst people had concerns around the spend, a lot of people felt that they had to do it because they needed that level of policing. And I think Neil can probably say more about the overall statistics of the survey.
Sure, you're citing the 2,000 respondents as being relatively small. Well, it can seem like a small number when we think about the whole population of West Yorkshire, but in terms of an opinion survey like this is a credible number of people to speak to. We've managed to increase the number of people who have engaged with the survey through that mechanism this year by 20%, and it's a big ask actually to get 2,000 people around Christmas time to feedback about their council tax. If we look at Greater Manchester at the moment, they're going to their panel with a consultation based on 700 responses. So it's hard to achieve those numbers, but in terms of running a sample survey like that across West Yorkshire, if you look at opinion polls, we don't have to have multiple thousands of respondents replying to get close to that final figure. We've got 71% this time around, but the way that probability sampling works in an opinion survey of that kind of type means we don't have to have huge numbers of respondents to get close to that figure. So for example, with this survey, by the time we've got about 1,000 responses in, we're already close to that 70% mark figure for support. The extra 1,000 we get just sort of refines that figure a little bit.
Thank you. And as Alison just said to me, that it is not our time frame. This is a government time frame, and it is about Christmas. And you know, we have those deadlines. We are really delighted and grateful to members of the public that have taken time out to help us with this decision over what is often a busy time for families. So I want to publicly put on record my thanks to the team for showing again West Yorkshire actually ahead of the pack when it comes to consultation. And that was the same with the safety of women and girls, the police and crime plan. We are reaching communities that have never been asked this question before, and I think it's all credit to the team. So thank you, team.
Yeah, and we should just say North Yorkshire got 1,000. So, yeah. And if the government gave us our settlement figure in November, which is the aspiration, they used to do that 100 years ago when I was on the council, then we would be able to ask more people. We would have a bigger time frame to go out to people. So, yeah, if they step up, we'll be able to, you know, get more people to engage.
So are you saying, Alison, you only can start a consultation when you receive the figures?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So
we
our hands are tied.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it was going to be £13 because you might remember that we were given a 3-year settlement figure of £10 for 3 years. So the first year it was £10, then last year it was £15. We were led to believe it was going to be £15 again, but obviously there was a lot of argument amongst the government about being the highest taxing government since the war, and then they brought it down to £13. So that's why we ended up with a £3 additional sum. So we couldn't go out until we had that surety.
I don't know who scrutinised the government, but I'd be great if you could scrutinise them, that they give it to you a bit earlier, that we can consult.
Well, we all scrutinise them, don't we?
Well, if you come try and get it earlier, that we can go out earlier to consult, because I like our voices heard. You know, the more voice we heard, the better it is for you. Thank you.
Yeah, there is one scrutiny committee, and that's the ballot box, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I won't go there. Yes. Yeah, but we need the figures that we can hear everyone's voice, and it takes pressure from you as well, and to go out at the last hour in the cold in Christmas time. You know, the earlier you have it, the quicker you have it done. Really. So see what you can do for next year. I'm sure, Alison, you can.
I can do everything.
Are there any other questions?
So can I just ask a quick one? Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
On the focus and reach with the focus groups, there are some conditional support for the increase. So around things like drug dealing, neighbourhood policing, antisocial behaviour, etc. Will that help to shape the plan going forwards?
Well, the wider consultation obviously shaped our plan, but we continually listen to what the public are telling us. But absolutely, and antisocial behaviour has always been one of the top 3 concerns for the public in wherever we go. So of course that is going to be a priority.
Yeah, and I could just say that so Sharon's writing up a fuller report from the group's work that she did and the engagement that she did, and that will all form part of the wider Voices of West Yorkshire consultation that we did last year, that we did at the start of the police and crime planning process. You weren't here, but in order to develop the police and crime plan, which is a statutory function of the PCC stroke mayor, they have to engage with the public of West Yorkshire as to their priorities. So this work will feed into that bigger piece of work, and come May after the election, if it's us or if it isn't us, it will form part of that consultation, and so yes, it will speak to them the development of the new police and crime plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. If we just refer back to page 11 of the report on rape and serious sexual offences.
Which report?
Sorry,
Page 11 of the
yeah,
report.
yeah, correct, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Well, first of all, I note that for CSEA, there is some reasoning and context given behind the increase in the trends, but we say now in bullet point 2, over the next 4 years, rape is projected to increase and sexual offences is projected to reduce. Is there any further context you could give us as to the reasoning around those predictions?
So this is from the force management statement.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of projections done using all sorts of, so morale, one of the tools that is used, but also because of the work that the police are doing and that we're doing to get more victims of rape to report. So as a result of all the VOG work that we're doing, not to say that men are not also subject to it, we know that they are, but women in particularly are being targeted by the VOG work that we've been doing over the last 2.5 years, and we believe that is leading to more people reporting. And a third of all rapes are historical here in West Yorkshire. Really strong, clear focus on historical child sex abuse, which is why 152 people have been sentenced for over 1,600 years since 2016 because of that focus. Although I have to say that the special grant pays for the CSE union has just been cut 30% to 45%. So we'll come back on that one once we know more. But there is a massive amount of work that West Yorkshire have done to understand this data, and this is lifted from the force management statement, which obviously we've all had copies of.
If I could just add as well, what we want to do is drive down the sexual offences in that direction, particularly as an ally councillor. I'm sure you've already shared the Just Don't video. We are really trying to challenge that low-level sexual harassment in the street that then obviously can escalate into serious crime. So if councillors haven't seen it, please do share that, because that's part of our whole raft of hopefully change for West Yorkshire. Male behaviour change is so much part of this jigsaw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry.
I just want to follow up on that. Beg your pardon, Commissioner. I just want to check I've understood your explanation correctly. Apologies for my voice. Over the next 4 years, rape is projected to increase and sexual offences is projected to reduce. What you're saying is that rape is not expected to increase. It's the reporting of rape that is expected to increase. But likewise, sexual offences is projected to reduce. Are you saying that actual sexual offences are expected to reduce?
Well, it's all
or
reported.
the reporting of sexual offences is expected
It's all
to
reported,
reduce?
but not Mystic Meg Hour. So it has to be the reporting from the public.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Confusion.
Yeah. We don't know what we don't know.
Are there any other questions? Members,
Sorry, just following on from Councillor Kingston's question, can I just ask about the domestic abuse? Because the report says that domestic abuse is significantly higher in West Yorkshire than the national average. Is that a reporting issue, or is that we feel that is a significantly worse issue here than elsewhere?
It's a recording issue. So I'm sure proportionately the same number of people are subject to domestic abuse in West Yorkshire, for head of population than in other major cities, but we record everything in West Yorkshire, and that's about having outstanding data integrity. So it's the case that if you've got multiple cases of domestic abuse, we will record against the same perpetrator. We will record, other forces might record, it's happened 6 times, we'll take it as 1 case. But we will record 6 cases or 10 cases or whatever it is. And then we also record repeat domestic abuse. So the recording here is outstanding.
But I would add that there is a tension there, that we are trying to drive down rape and sexual assault and domestic violence, whilst also encouraging people to report because they will be believed and they will be supported. And victim confidence is on the rise, so victims feel that they will be heard. So whilst we're trying to drive it down, the numbers are going up, so there is a tension there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've got the highest confidence for domestic abuse out of all crime types here in West Yorkshire.
Right, that's good to know. Thank you.
Did you want to come in?
Yeah, I've just dug into the figures as you were talking, and it is predictions, and it is thankfully relatively low numbers, but there's still far too many. So we're talking about a prediction and it's a projection of rape offences going from 3,600 to 3,700 over the course of the next 4 years, which is where you get the rise. and it's actually serious sexual offences, not all sexual offences. And there's a reduction from a prediction of 7,800 to 7,700, which is where you get a small reduction. These are graphs, you know what I mean? We're looking at the future, taking past history, a trajectory of what's been happening with reporting, knowing that there's still far more rate to be reported than we actually get to take. So, thankfully they're relatively still small numbers in the great scale, but they're just predictions.
Lovely. So, is everyone happy? Well, not happy, but no more questions. Okay. So, at this part of the meeting, can I please ask
Thank you, Chair.
to excuse us for agenda, and also remind you that we are still recorded. You have just heard what the Alison, Tracy and John have to say and the officers. So let's get into a conversation. I don't know who would like to kick this conversation off. What do you think?
I think we raised some valid points, particularly around consultation and setting up the precepts. On balance, though, I'm happy to support the precepts.
Yeah, it was a very positive question going to Alison and the team, and the answers they gave to us, I think it was fairly due. But I'm thinking that they can go out earlier than November to December, whenever, to ask the question by giving different options. So the session you agree with that.
Well, other forces do, don't they?
Yeah.
So it's a self-imposed time frame because they want to put the figure in. But actually, if you give people a range of options, which other forces do, nothing to stop you going out, and then you've got the evidence to back up your decision.
Correct.
And then it will be less common there to members. So maybe that's something we need to get started sometimes.
Also, we heard in terms of consultation that the different groups that they reached out to, which is brilliant. And they did say that there was a good level of detail in the conversations that they had, and I think some of that detail needs to be put into the consultation papers for next time.
Chair. Yeah, I agree with that last comment. I was surprised that I was slightly reassured by the explanation of the drilling down with different groups. I think we should push this thing. I mean, they were quite clear. They were hemmed in and they could only do the survey, whatever, at point X. And we've got experience of others doing it at point Y and Z. So I think we should push that goes earlier. And also, I think Trevor mentioned when we were discussing before, what do other forces do? I'm back to my best practice. You know, what works better within the area of West Yorkshire and what works better in other forces? You know, we need to be constantly improving this survey. You know, I take the point of these statistical boffins. It sounds like magic, I know. 1,000's good, 2,000 only improved it marginally. I kind of find myself saying, well, I've got to believe it, you know, although I don't understand it. But they're between a rock and a hard place, so I'm inclined to support all of it. Oh, yes.
Anyone else?
Just, I remember from a previous meeting, we have provided them with examples of how it's done elsewhere. And have they read those examples?
We could remind
because they're claiming things that we know not to be true because of these examples that we've seen of what is done elsewhere.
We could remind them again, because Councillor Kingston. No, sorry.
Okay. So the explanation stroke pushback was that we are better than the forces around us. Talk about GMP having only 700, North Yorkshire only having 1,000. I do keep reminding myself that this is a survey and not a referendum. You know, so we're not expecting a 30% turnout. But I'm sure, as Trevor has said, that we've seen examples of forces that have sent surveys out earlier with some anticipated options, and I struggle to see why that's a hard barrier for us in engaging early and getting an even better response.
That's what I'm saying. They just need to give the public a bit of options, you know, to make a decisions when they get the figures. And it will also cut down their workload instead of cramp it all in at the last minute, isn't it?
Okay, let's pick up on it. I mean, in the notes that we've got, the briefing document, the team have very kindly put in there on page 3 the commitments that we asked for in the precinct. Under the discussion, sorry, it says under the consultation, engaging early discussion which happened, but it also says, with the aim of providing the public with the detail of the implications of different options. Now that's, to the best of my knowledge, that didn't happen, and I think we have to be smart with our wording if we make that another condition. I agree, you know, go early with these options, and there are other examples out there.
You want to say?
Yeah, say, do you have it within your power as a panel to get them to come to you earlier in the year with their proposals, and you can shape the proposals to make sure that, so for arguments, I mean, I don't know whether you've got the powers to do it. I mean, it's fine me talking about that, but, you know, could the panel, say, in September, ask for the first cut as to what they were planning to do in terms of scenario setting, and you then take a bit more control of pushing the process out quicker? Is that feasible or not?
That has happened, and we've had the same pushback. And this year in October, panel members received a copy, and it was basically 2 lines, and it was a very, very frosty meeting. And this wording, we've had very similar commitments over the years, and this one has got more detail in it in terms of asking, you know, or saying what panel members want. I do wonder whether it might be worth trying to set up a small working group to work with officers and to explore outside the meeting process, where it does always seem very difficult.
That was what I was going to, I mean, would a small working group of panel members here be able, you know, would the Commissioner listen to a small group of councillors here leading the process and pushing the process? Because at the end of the day, you've got to be satisfied with what the feedback is saying as well. You know, so that you've got the comfort of, yeah, the majority of people do support the proposal. So you can then genuinely say, based on the feedback that's come back, we are comfortable with it. You may have personal reservations about the increase, but the public out there are broadly supportive. So unless you've got a really good reason, you should then be supporting it. And it gives you the reassurance.
That's something we could look at, see how members stand.
It's up to panel if that feel that would be useful.
If panel feel it would be useful.
Yep.
Yeah, we can suggest that, and we can arrange, get a few councillors who can to go on the group. Or later, we'll send an email round. And then so we'll go on the group. Yeah. Okay,
So, Chair, so I think there's a couple of conditions, aren't there? I mean, one, clearly something around the consultation is a word you put in. I think there's something around the point that Councillor Anderson raised and I raised about priority-based budgeting and the cost savings, that we need to see that for the going forward. And what were the other points? In terms of on the consultation.
Yeah. I mean, the medium-term financial plan, they should be working on that throughout the year. So round about next September, they should have their first cut of the medium-term financial plan. That should be brought to you to see whether or not you are happy with the general thrust of where it's going, where the issues are.
Yeah.
To be fair, they do.
We have that timetable then, I think for September in the agenda.
Sorry, it's just come back to what the three things are. There's the consultation, and in that there's a thing about being early. There's the priority-based budgeting, and in other words, based on the medium-term financial plan, how you're going to address those issues. We'd like to see what that priority would be. And the third point was around reserves. We want some reassurance that wherever possible they're going to top these reserves up and be no more. Well, sorry, that they're kept at a sustainable and reasonable level.
Okay, that does
So with the three commitments there.
Okay, so should we go?
Just very quickly, we talked about the date the consultation starts, but we also talked about including the percentage increase and not just the figure. So it's about the quality of that consultation as well as just how early it goes out. To be honest, the statistics and the numbers that they were talking about, it does stack up as being statistically relevant. The margin of error is quite small on that 70% figure. A slight thing to consider, and I'm not raising this as an actual concern, but something to consider. If all the other areas are moving forwards earlier than us with a lot more options and then getting a far smaller turnout, is it possible that because we're able to be more specific we get better data back? It's just something to think about. It only came into my head as we were chatting about it.
But if we set the working group up,
that's exactly what I'm saying. So I think we should consider that in the working group.
Yeah, keep an eye on the working group.
But I think one of the points they were saying, Chris, was that, if I got it right, because it's Christmas, people aren't responding.
Yeah.
So on that basis, if they go earlier with a wider range of options, there should be an increase, shouldn't there?
You think? You would hope so.
You'll have 4,000.
They got 23% response rate, which is actually incredible. But
They can improve it.
Well, they're up on last year, but they're 15% down from 2 years ago.
no, in total, they vote out and they got 23% back from households, which is very high.
That is incredible.
We expect 5%.
Okay, should we go to the vote now? Yes. Oh, sorry,
I think you know I am.
You won't know again.
Yeah, okay then. Do you want to go around the room, or can I call names out as you are on my little list?
Yes, let's call names.
Okay. So, and I'm not sure what order these are in because they're not alphabetical, so apologies for that. So Trevor, do you support, veto or abstain?
I support with the conditions that we've raised.
Joe Sykes.
Likewise, I support with the conditions that we discussed.
Councillor Hayden.
I support, but only with the conditions that we've discussed.
Councillor Sullivan.
Support with conditions.
Councillor Kingston.
Support with the conditions.
Councillor Thornber.
Support with the conditions.
Councillor Lowe.
Support with the conditions.
Councillor Smith.
Support with conditions.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Support with conditions.
Councillor Taylor.
Support.
Councillor Anderson.
Support with conditions.
Councillor Sharp.
Support with conditions.
Councillor Ferguson.
Support with conditions.
And Councillor Ali.
Support with conditions.
Okay, thank you. Then we have 14 out of the 15 that support. Do you want me to just run through quickly the conditions before we call in the
Yes, please.
Mayor? Okay. And if you've got a preference for the order of them, of course. So you want a commitment to have conversations about the quality of the budget consultation and to look at providing more understanding of what options might be, with a possibility of a small working group set up with panel to look at this earlier in the year. And I'll put something in there about best practice, and we'll just give an outline and then we'll firm these up in the formal report that we have to provide.
Sorry, and going out early, isn't
Yeah,
that one?
earlier, yes. Quality and earlier. That you want to report back on the mid-term financial forecast, more detail on priority-based budgeting and some further assurances on the reserves position being kept at sustainable levels. And you, again, around September time, do we want to say for that?
Can I suggest we might not grant to ask for more detail, but perhaps an executive overview? What I don't want to end up with is a 60-page document that means nothing to me.
I don't think we need a report on the medium-term financial plans. We get that anyway.
Yeah.
We want to see the report on the priority-based budgeting.
Yeah.
And some detail attached. Well, in executive level.
Correct, yeah.
With some
Yeah.
numbers.
Correct,
yeah. We can refer to. Yeah.
We didn't say anything on recruitment. What am I missing here? Budget consultation, reserves and priority-based budgeting.
Was it three?
That's that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's because I've lumped the
You put everything
two
in one-
together,
just
haven't
put them
I?
in there, then you can read it from there, can't you? But I didn't put it all with big notes.
Yeah.
Try and get them in there.
They used to wait in a long time, so they can pretty well.
Thank you for coming back. We have an elaboration. You have no choice. You could have gone. We have had an answer for you, and we have got some, what is it now? Recommendation alongside the budget. But overall, it's a yes with the conditions that we are going to give you. So it has been approved, 90% after you agree with the ambition.
Can I say, Chair, thank you to all the panel for your wisdom and your collaborative approach to this challenge. So thank you.
So we can go with it.
So panel will provide a report with these to you in due course. But panel have asked for a commitment to an early conversation on the budget consultation, looking to provide more an earlier and more understanding of what the options might be, and suggested a possible small working group to have that early in the year. Panel would also like a report back with executive level information on the priority based budgeting, and also a report back with assurances on the reserves position to ensure that they kept a sustainable level.
Thank you so much for that. We're happy to respond by letter unless anybody has anything to add. But yes, very happy to respond to that.
Okay. So can I thank Tracy, Alison and John for all the work that you've been doing across West Yorkshire and to keep West Yorkshire residents safe. And not just you three, you couldn't do it without your officers. So I'd like to thank all the officers for their contribution in what they are doing out in West Yorkshire. Thank you. So could we move on now to item 7, which is the Mayor Annual Report.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the panel have seen this report. We now have a real copy. Please do take one of these with you. And I also reflected on your response as well. And I agree that the simplicity of it, the straightforward nature of it, makes it accessible as well to members of the public. So thank you. This is the final published copy, and just for information on this. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Please read these. Very classy, very expensive.
Not very expensive. Not very expensive. And there's a limited run, I'm afraid, because we don't want to waste money on copies that just sit on
but
shelves.
look how pleasant. Or you just make it
200
look
quid.
expensive.
Yeah.
200 quid. Very good.
It was a bargain, Chair.
So please read it, digest it, and share it with your council and your community, and advise them it will be out in the public domain sooner than later. So I take all councillors to share it with their council staff to have a good read to see what Mr. Yorkshire Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Constable are doing in Mr. Yorkshire. Thank you. There is anything for Tracy and there's any comments?
It was discussed in December, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'll say thank you again for what you are doing. My agenda is all gone too long now, so it's, I don't know where it is, can't find it again. Item 8 is main response. She's done it now.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, just to update members of the panel. Mayor's question time, we were talking about scrutiny and transparency earlier. This was the first of 3. It was in Wakefield, God's own county, God's own region, at the Hepworth, and really well attended, over 50 people, and really great to know that our work on safety of women and girls was one of the discussion points raised. Also, panel members are welcome to the next one, and I would encourage you to join us Monday the 5th of February in Halifax, Thursday the 22nd of February in Leeds, and details can be found on the Combined Authorities website, so please do share that with your constituents, and I would love to see you there. Also, I had a really great meeting with ambassadors from the Girl Guides who have shown real interest in democracy, and I've invited the Girl Guides to send young people as advocates for youth voice to these question times, because it's an opportunity to challenge not just myself, but Alison and members of the Combined Authority were there as well, so lots of issues to be raised. Also, Vision Zero, I know this is really important to you, to reduce deaths and serious injuries on our roads. I was really pleased that Alison, my Deputy Mayor, could attend Parliament alongside Dr Ian Greenwood, you may know, who is an extraordinary campaigner after the death of his daughter Alice in a road incident. It was also the policy team supporting to engage local MPs in the Vision Zero. Good turnout, cross-party, 5 Labour, 3 Conservative, and really positive engagement on social media as well. So we're hoping to be really one of the first adopters of a very dynamic approach to Vision Zero. And thank you again, Alison, for flying the flag for West Yorkshire and drawing in lots of MPs to take part. The Retail Roundtable, again, the Deputy Mayor will host a British Retail Consortium Roundtable in March. You'll know as well as me that retailers are very worried that the cost of living crisis also means a rise in shoplifting and obviously concerns from members of staff who have to challenge shoplifters. So this will be an opportunity to also hold policing to account when it comes to retail crime, and we'll be a listening ear to the consortium. Knife Angel, you'll know that it was in Bradford a few months ago, last year, and is now at the Armouries, led by Leeds Community Safety Partnership, Safer Leeds. It's a month-long multi-agency campaign focused on knife crime. And the Knife Angel has really attracted lots of interest. It's so stunning. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty overwhelming that some of those knives still have the signs of blood on them. It's quite an emotional experience to see it. And Alison spoke at the launch on Thursday. Can I also put on record my thanks to the young people from Catch, who some of you will know is an amazing organisation. They spoke very articulately on the dangers of knife crime and how they were saying to young people that if you carry a knife, that knife will be used and it would be you or someone else that is harmed. So they were really powerful advocates. And also, finally, Chair, if I may, we're looking to launch our Women and Girls Safety Unit. You'll know this is the first in the country, working with Dame Louise Casey on International Women's Day. We're hoping she's going to be free to have an event around that unit, taking in that public health approach to really double down on our focus on the safety of women and girls. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for very refreshing. Are there anything to ask, Tracy? Comment? Thanks again. Item 9, public key decisions. So all your papers are being published on your website. Action plan, item 10. All our action plans. Okay. Is everyone agree with the action plan? Number 11, forward agenda plan.
Just on the agenda plan, I think the dates are wrong in the March meeting. Is it the 8th or is it the 1st?
I think it's the 8th, because it's on the 1st.
It's gone in the diary first.
Is it? It says the 8th.
Yeah, I've just noticed myself. It's in my diary wrong.
We'll check it and
We'll double check and we'll send something around.
Item 12, complaint received by panel. Mr. Say there is no complaint.
My favourite item, Chair.
There's no complaint. And number 13, this is my favourite. Any other business?
Point of clarification, can we just go back to that date? Are we talking 1st of March or 8th?
We are going to check and get back.
Are you going to check and get back?
March. Somebody's mentioned March. It's in the 1st.
I think the 1st was the invite that was sent out.
We'll get that.
Sorry, just to go back and cover item 11 on the forward agenda.
Yes.
Have we done that?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to go back up to the top there, the implications from the Baron's Casey report. I don't think we've taken that in the public arena, and that's still outstanding out.
I think been told we'll get something till next.
Is it next month?
I did give a full report in private, you might remember, and then we put something in the minutes which went into the public domain, which synthesised down the majority of what I've said to you in private. I understand that you'd like something more, so I'm working with Catherine, Partnerships team, to bring something together in line with the, I think it's the Essex example. Yeah, so we'll try to do that for the next meeting, but it might be the one after, but we'll try.
Thank you.
So in the next couple of months. Okay, any other business? No, we're all happy. So next time, item 4, there's no penalty.
It's just the date and time of the next meeting, which I think it's an error in this. It's on the agenda on the 1st, but we will double check that. And at the next meeting on the 1st of October.
So thank you all, and keep up the good work, you three, but also your officers, because I know you